Well, hello there. This is Vitriol's the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Don't miss out on my new book, 50+2 Chess Quick Wins, Tactical Ideas for Exciting Chess for Beginner Players. Available on Amazon for $13.99. Great for people wanting to understand the tactical ideas that underlie quick wins. Don't miss out on your copy. Now, in this game, I have probably one of the best games that I've ever played. But I did make some mistakes, did make some blunders, so I call this my best bad game. Watch all the way to the end because the end part of the game, the end game, is absolutely amazing and stunning. Now, let's start off at the beginning. I've got the black pieces and white decided to lead with the 4 knights Italian. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4. So they start off with the Italian as usual, 2 knights defense, and now they develop the other knight. 2 knights Italian. I love 2 knights Italian when playing with the black pieces because I get knight captures, and when they take back, we now have d5, a very, very nice fork. Fork, this is actually fine for white, but very often white will capture with the bishop, assuming there's a desperado, capture back, and here black is very, very nicely ahead. Now, in this position, white is actually okay as long as they know the theory, which is bishop back, and my opponent did know that, and he captures, and in this position, it's just about equal. Black is slightly ahead still here, though. It's minus 0.1. White has maybe a little bit more development. Black, however, we've got a central pawn. It's balanced, it's okay. I quite like this because there's some openings in the center already. Now, in this position, I just thought for a while, but then decided to play bishop to c5 to stare at white's f-pawn. Now, Stockfish would suggest that bishop to d6 is better to defend that pawn because white can trade their bishop for my knight and then they get to win that pawn. So in a sense, this is kind of a little bit like a gambit. Now they decided to play a bit slowly with d3, and so I decided to effectively play a gambit. I'm going to gambit that pawn, f5, immediately push things ahead. What is white going to do? So that pretty much forces them to take, and this almost ends up looking a little bit like the exchange variation of the Yanish Gambit. So in the Yanish Gambit, white plays a Ruy Lopez and then exchanges their bishop for my knight, so captures, and they take, which is what they do here, and now we've got queen to d4. And it's quite, my idea here was to keep the queen on this long square diagonal. Now you can see Stockfish reckons a queen to f6 and maybe immediate short castles was better. But here I thought was okay because if they decide to play queen to g5 with check, I can block like this, takes, and there is potentially a very nice attack. And that rook is still defended along that dark square diagonal by my queen. So that was my idea. However, they decide to play queen to e2. Makes a bit of sense, potentially they'll get a discovered check with an attack on my queen. So that's what I thought they were going to potentially try to do. So need to move the king, nice and easy, short castles. Very, very good. They now take that pawn, to snatch, basically a snatch. And in this position, I literally didn't see my queen was hanging. Now, when I started this game, when I was playing this game, I was actually experiencing a migraine. I get migraines every now and then, a few times a year. So I had a headache, didn't see that attack, and so I actually decided to play bishop to b7, attacking that knight. Also, attacking the g2 pawn along that light square diagonal. So I've got my queen on the dark square diagonal, I've got my bishop on the long light square diagonal. And here, I think white might have gotten a little bit spooked. So clearly, they should take the queen. However, That's attacking down that diagonal. Potentially I can get a rook onto the e file, pinning their queen to the king. That looks a bit scary. Now, that's actually okay here because I can always block that potentially with bishop to the e3 square. However, that does work if they take, because my queen's not actually going to be there. However, for whatever reason, I think they got a bit spooked and they decided to, snatch and grab, bring the knight all the way back to e5. And that was a blunder. It's a straight up blunder from pretty much winning for white to now basically losing. It's about -5 here because now I have takes, very good, makes sense. But now, as I said, rook ae8, pinning that knight to the queen. What are they going to do? They have to bring the bishop to block that. That makes sense. But now I get to take the knight because the knight is hanging. And that's fine. They can take if they want, captures back, and again, pin. So very, very powerful move here. Very happy to see that. They capture, that's fine. I take that pawn with an attack on that rook. They bring the rook all the way to d file. Makes sense. Pinned. What do we do with pinned pieces? Place pressure on the pinned piece. f4, attacking that bishop. And that bishop pretty much is going to be lost potentially. White counterattacks, really good move. A rook and queen battery staring at the g7 square, potentially a mating attack. But remember, queen is on that long dark square diagonal. So the original queen to d4 was a really, really good place for the queen. So at the moment, it's fine. And look, I've got this rook, that bishop is pinned. This rook, very powerful as well. I had a long think. I decided to first give a check with the queen. So that forces, the king, potentially to that square. And now captures the bishop and the pawn staring at that square. What is white going to do? White, they thought for a while and they decided to play a rook to e1, and that's a blunder. It's a blunder because on high depth here, there's actually a mating net. So mating 10, pretty hard to see. They actually needed to push that pawn here. Now, they probably didn't like that because it looks like then I have a potential fork of the king and rook. But of course, that square would then be defended by their rook on g2. But no, pretty tricky, pretty hard to see because here I've got a pretty logical move. So here I thought a while. I found, I saw what was probably a fairly prosaic move. So I can capture here, and then basically what is, white going to do? They don't really have very many choices. So they can force a check. So basically we end up trading queens, captures, and we sort of enter a completely winning endgame. So this is the more prosaic line I could have played, but I had a headache. I should have lost my queen. I noticed I hung my queen pretty much right after I make that other move. So I decided in this position, I was going to play something audacious. I was going to do a queen sacrifice. Queen captures the rook on e1 with check. So this is a relative inaccuracy, but I'm going to say that it's a very tricky move. It's a relative inaccuracy because here I don't have a direct mating attack. However, it's actually very difficult for white here to play. Now there's a force move, the king has to capture back. And here I now have pawn captures the pawn, double check. Double check. So, lovely, lovely attack. What is white's king going to do? Well, here, white has only 3 legal moves. And I calculated this. They can go here, here, or they can move forward to d2. Now, of these 3 options, these 2 options almost lead to immediate mate. In the game, I thought the most natural looking move for white would be to place the king onto f1 to block promotion. As I said, that's what they did in this game. And immediately I have rook to e1 mate, because defended, it's a back rank mate, and of course that pawn is defended two ways by my rook on f8 and the bishop. So very, very lovely checkmate. Very pleased to have gotten that. So that's what happened in the game. But what if they played the other way? Well, I have check. And here, basically the king has to come here, but then mate. It's still mate. So I calculate those two possibilities. But what if the king came to d2? Let's have a look now. I didn't calculate this in the game. Double check, king here. But in this position, we have an absolute brutal line of glory. Bishop to b4. Brilliant move. Why is it a brilliant move? Well, it's hanging. But if the queen captures, they no longer have mate. And then I effectively promote my pawn to a queen, and I swapped my bishop for a queen. Brilliant. That's great. So they can't do that. They can't do that. The king cannot move to this square, because if they move to this square, effectively we'll have checkmate in a few turns. So what can they do? They have to block. So with this check, they have to block with that pawn. They block with the pawn. Now can you see what is my next move? It's an absolute stunning killer move. Did you find it? It is f-pawn forward under promote to knight with check. And here the king has only 3 legal moves. So obviously it can't come here because the file is defended by my rook. It can go here, here, or here. For those two squares, if the king ever goes to d1 or c2, I then have knight to e3 with a family fork, and I win the queen, and I basically enter an endgame. I think it's 3 pieces versus 1, completely winning. So the king cannot go to either of those squares. With check, the king can only go here. But now we've got another, another check. King must go here. Remember, it can't go to either of those C squares, otherwise they lose the queen. But with the king in that square, I have rook to e1, check. King now forced to c2, knight to e3, family fork, absolutely destroyed. And wherever the king goes next turn, it doesn't really matter. Let's say they go here, we now win the queen. And whether they take that, it doesn't really matter, because from this position onwards, I've got 3 pieces versus white's 1, and it's an easy endgame for the win. So that was an absolutely brilliant line where, if the king moved here, it looks like they escaped for a while, but under promotion to knight with check, eventually forcing a win of the queen. What an amazing line. Good game. GG. The big takeaway from this game is to not resign after blundering a piece. No game was ever won by resigning, and sometimes in the aftermath of a serious mistake arises glory and amazing fun games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.